All right, well, welcome, folks. We are about to get started with the November 19th Puget Sound Energy Public Webinar. We just started our live stream, and we'll be letting folks in shortly and get started in about 5 minutes. Thanks for being here. Hey, folks. Welcome to the Puget Sound Energy November 19th public webinar. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We've already started our live streaming on YouTube, and we'll start promptly at 11:30. So thanks for holding tight. And hi, folks. Welcome if you're watching on the live stream. This is the November 19th Puget Sound Energy public webinar. We are waiting just a few more minutes to let people join, and then we'll get started promptly at 11:30. Thanks for being here. Okay, great. Pauline, you want to go ahead and let folks in? Are there still folks in the waiting room?
Should be let in now.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the November 19th Puget Sound Energy Public Webinar, where we are going to be focusing on how PSE plans for a clean energy future. My name is Annie Kilbrick-Smith, and I'm going to be facilitating today's meeting with my colleagues at Triangle Associates. We're about to get started, and we are recording this meeting as well as live streaming it on YouTube today. So it can be viewed after today by visiting the PSE YouTube channel. And Pauline, if you could put that into the chat for folks. As we get started, please know that we are going to be asking you all to use the chat and reactions bar to interact with us a little bit today. We have a large group, so we would love to see some of your thoughts and reactions as we go throughout our time together. PSE is really excited to be offering a widely attended webinar, and this is the first of its kind being done by this PSE team. So we're hoping to use the Zoom platform today as an interactive and engaging format, while also acknowledging this is the first time this team is doing it with such a large group. So please be patient with us. We're going to be trying out a few different things, and we'll love to hear your feedback through the end of meeting exit poll at the end of today's webinar. We're going to try to get to as many questions as today as possible from all of you, and want to encourage you to use the Zoom engagement features as we request it throughout the next hour together. And with that, if we could go ahead and start sharing screen and put that PowerPoint right up for us. Can others see that?
I see it, Amy.
Okay, perfect. For some reason, it's not showing up for me. Okay, that's okay. All right, so if we could go to slide 2, Jack. So this is what your Zoom control bar should look like. There are 3 main ways to engage with each other today. First is using the emoji reaction feature. Second is the Q&A pod. So please go ahead and type your questions as they come up throughout the presentation in there. Everyone's going to be able to see each other's questions and their names. And you can also upvote questions that you want to see responded to. So if another person has a question that you like and you'd also like to see an answer to that, go ahead and give a thumbs up. If you want to ask questions anonymously, you may use the PSE feedback form, which is online, and we'll provide that link in the chat in a few moments. There's also the chat function as the third ability to interact with us today, which is currently not available. We're going to make it available for folks after the first 10 minutes. And we ask that you use this chat function only for engaging peer-to-peer, engaging with us on the prompts that we provide in terms of interaction, for help on the technology side. So Pauline is here to help with any of those technology needs, and for sharing links. You can also use the show captions function, which is down at the bottom of your screen, and you can choose this option if you'd like to be seeing what is said in English with those English captions on, or in another language, so translated live. So to do this, you have to go to the closed caption function, slide the blue tab over to turn on the captions, select English as your speaking language, and select your preferred language for the captions to be translated into. We know the translation feature is not perfect, so please go ahead and bear with us, and feel free to share with us your feedback at the end of the meeting, how well this worked for you, and any recommendations you might have. Okay, next slide. On this slide, you're going to see some facilitator requests for how we plan to conduct this meeting and how we hope you can all show up and participate today. So first and foremost, we're asking you to allow the facilitator, that's me, to guide the group process. We also are asking you to engage with each other in a constructive and courteous manner. We'd like you, as I mentioned, to use the Q&A pod feature to share your questions or feedback throughout the webinar. We'd ask you to please keep your questions focused on the webinar topic to ensure the relevance. And PSE is going to do their best to address as many questions as they can. But if they don't get to your question today, please don't worry. They will provide a response in the follow-up feedback report. For additional input, you are welcome to use the feedback form or email PSE at the address that we have on the screen. And Pauline will go ahead and put those 2 links in the chat for folks as well. Next slide. As you may know, PSE is doing a Visa gift card raffle for those that attend one of the 2 sessions this week. The raffle is for $100 gift cards, and there's going to be 3 winners chosen at random and emailed on November 25th. May the odds be in your favor on that. Next slide. So our safety moment for today is focusing on carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is sneaky. So it's the ultimate hide and seek champion, colorless, odorless, and stealthy. You definitely do not want to let it in. Please make sure your carbon monoxide alarms are installed in tip-top shape. It's the easiest way to keep your home and your loved ones safe and sound. Next slide. So for today's presentation and facilitation team, we have 2 lead folks from PSE and another one of my colleagues to support from Triangle. Ray Outlaw, PSE's Manager of Communications Initiatives and Clean Energy Strategy, will be presenting today with his team member, Meredith Mathis, who is supporting him. And then I have my colleague, Pauline, who is available for any technological questions that come up regarding your participation on Zoom. Next slide. As for our agenda today for session 1, once we get through this introduction section, Ray will be presenting more information about PSE, what clean energy transformation is, understanding and responding to customer needs, and developing a roadmap for the future. So as he gives his presentation, we have opportunities peppered throughout the time for live questions and answers, and we'll go ahead and facilitate that. And so it will take place through about 12:25. I'll be helping to facilitate that Q&A process, and then we'll wrap up any final questions and get adjourned by 12:30. If you have any questions about the agenda or the format, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A as we go. Okay, Jack, if you could skip the session 2 slide and go to slide 9. So as I introduce PSE, I'd like to ask Pauline to turn on the chat for participants and for you all to respond in the chat to a question by typing your answer in. We'll go ahead and put that question in the chat. So when you think of Puget Sound Energy, what services come to mind? We'd love to hear from you all on that. And as those responses waterfall in, I'm going to go ahead and ask PSE's Ray Outlaw to get ready to kick off his presentation. As I mentioned, we have built-in pauses throughout the presentation to respond to questions that come in through the Q&A pod, and we'll facilitate them in the order received and prioritize the upvoted questions.
All right, thanks, Annie.
I was just looking to see if anyone had responded to that. And so just got a few responses: electricity, gas, electricity. So we'll see those coming in. And yes, Ray, I was going to turn it over to you next. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it to Ray to get us started. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Annie, and thank you all for taking some time to join us today. As Annie mentioned, this is the first in a series of public webinars for us about our resource planning process. We are really excited that you're here today to be part of this. What you'll hear later is a new process from the start. Before we get into this planning work, I wanted to take just a few minutes and talk a little bit about PSE, especially for some of you who might be the first time you're attending one of these events. So PSE is Washington's largest and oldest utility. We serve about 1.2 million electric customers and 900,000 gas customers, covering about 6,000 square miles. The map on the screen, the colored areas, show you where our service territory is. One thing important to note is we don't serve gas and electricity to all of our customers. Some customers are gas only, some are electric only, and some are gas and electric customers. So that's what the map on the left and the color coding is designed to help you visualize. On the gas side of the system, we have about 13,000 miles of natural gas pipeline and another 13,000 miles of gas service lines. And then on the electric side, we have almost 24,000 miles of electric distribution lines and another 3,000 miles of transmission lines. Just to put that in scale, that's enough power lines to wrap all the way around the Earth. And our roughly 3,100 employees live and work in the region all over Puget Sound, from the south end to the north, with offices spread throughout. And by the way, if you're wondering what I meant by distribution versus transmission lines, we're going to talk about that on the next slide. So let's go to the next slide.
And Ray, just quick question. Is there any way you can turn up your volume? I got one question about that.
I can try.
I can hear you okay, if not. So it might be someone's own computer as well.
Okay, I've tried that in Zoom to see if it helps. Let me know if that's still not enough.
Okay, thanks,
And
Ray.
I'll try to speak up too. So our electric energy system starts with large or utility scale generation sources. These are things like hydroelectric dams or wind and solar farms. These are large facilities that generate electricity, and then that electricity must be transported and transformed from high voltage to low voltage to use in our homes and businesses. From those generation sources, electricity then typically goes to transmission lines, which are the largest and most notable power lines you see in the region, then to substations. You've probably seen your local substation, but you may or may not have noticed it. From there, electricity is transported via distribution and smaller service lines to our homes and businesses. All of this is on the PSE, what we call our PSE side of the meter, which is where electricity enters your home or residence or business. PSE has to plan for and maintain all the elements of the electrical system that are on our side of the meter. On the customer side of the meter, we're also working to support what are called distributed energy resources, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but those are resources like solar panels that generate energy for the customer, but can sometimes provide energy back into the electric system. Next slide, please. The natural gas system is similar to the electric system, but there is a network of pipes instead of wires. This infrastructure is less visible because it's largely underground, but critically important to the region. Similar to the electric system, natural gas travels through a series of pipes and stations until it reaches your home or business. Next slide. All right, we have a pause for questions, but I think they're all answered in the chat, yes? Or in the Q&A, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like they are, and it does say people are still having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. You sound good to me, but I am in a quiet room, so that could be why. Folks, just if you can't hear Ray completely, please feel free to turn your volume all the way up, or sometimes if you're in a loud space, it might be harder to hear. I think Ray has his volume all the way up. Okay, and some people said sound is good and loud on my end, so great, thank you. All right. Any other questions that we need to address? Okay, great. Well then, Ray, I think we can keep going.
Let's go to the next one. So what is the clean energy transformation? That's really what we're here to talk about today. And it dates back to 2019 for the state of Washington. The next slide, please. So climate policies have been really on a road to change since 2019. If you look at the slide, we're going to move from left to right, and the descriptions are above the years in the circles. In 2019, Washington State enacted really a very ambitious climate law called the Clean Energy Transformation Act, or we often call it CETA, C-E-T-A. This law is foundational, and it dictates that all Washington State utilities must have a carbon neutral electric supply by 2030 and provide 100% clean electricity by 2045. Subsequent laws and policy have supported this CETA, including the 2019 Clean Buildings Act, again, we're moving from left to right, which adopted energy standards for existing commercial buildings. And the act was expanded in 2022 and 23, respectively, with the goal of improving energy efficiency in commercial spaces. In 2021, Washington enacted the Climate Commitment Act, which caps and reduces greenhouse gas emissions from Washington's largest sources, incentivizing businesses to help reduce Washington State's carbon emissions. Then in 2021, the Clean Fuel Standard was added to help curb carbon pollution from the transportation sector. And in 2024, the decarbonization bill is really a planning bill that helps PSE thoughtfully plan for electric and natural gas choices of our customers, consistent with our state's aggressive climate goals. There has been some confusion around this bill, but to be clear, it does not include a ban on natural gas or change PSE's obligation to serve customers natural gas. That was a lot of policy and rules. I promise no pop quiz later, but we just wanted to give you kind of the framework and the background of where this clean energy transformation started and where it's headed. Next slide, please. So where are we then? What do all those dots on that map really mean for us? We're on a path to meet or exceed our clean energy obligations set forth by these laws. By the end of 2025, we will no longer provide electricity from coal. That's the first milestone. Then just 5 years later, and those are very short years in this planning space, we aim to have a carbon neutral electric system that's required by CETA, and on our way to achieving 100% clean electricity by 2045. But this isn't just a PSE journey. This is a journey we are taking with our customers, and that's why we're really excited you're here today. And next slide, I think we have another pause for questions.
Yeah, we do. And looks like there is a question in the chat or in the Q&A pod. So let's see if we can go ahead and open up that. Okay. All right. Open it. Just give me 1 second. Okay. It says, what is PSE's plan for microgrids? Is that something we would want to respond to now, or do we want to put that in our feedback survey or feedback report?
Yeah, Annie, I can say that PSE certainly sees value in microgrids. Where they can provide grid reliability and benefits for PSE and our customers. And just for folks who might not know what we mean by microgrid, this is when a portion of the electric system can essentially be isolated and to some degree self-sufficient for a period of time. And it generally requires customers who are plugged into the electric system so that electricity can move both from those large generation sources to customers and then also back into the grid from customers.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that, Ray. All right, so I'll mark that one as done, and I'll just go through the next few that we still have popped up that aren't answered yet. And so another question from Thomas, do we use coal?
Yes, coal is currently part of our electric supply. Although, as I said in a previous slide, our last remaining source of coal will be off of the system by the end of 2025.
Great, thanks, Ray. And then next question up we have in the queue that hasn't been answered yet is from Leslie. If you buy electricity from other sources, is it possible the energy is produced via coal?
Great question. I'm going to pause for a second and see if my colleagues have a detailed answer. We do buy electricity from the marketplace. We primarily are searching for clean electricity to buy from the marketplace, but I want to double check to make sure. I don't want to say it definitively, no, it's not possible. Wendy.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Ray. Hi, I'm Wendy Gerlitz. I'm Director of Regulatory Policy here at Puget Sound Energy. And, purchasing power is a little bit complicated, and there's a lot of different ways that Puget Sound Energy purchases power. And so what I can say is that any distinct contract that we have that's for specified power, where we are able to specify, we do have a clause in our contracts that prevents the supplier from supplying us with coal resources pursuant to the laws of Washington State, requiring that after 2025. One of the gray areas, I guess, is in the unspecified market purchases, where folks in the marketplace really just don't know what that electricity generating source is, just due to the nature of the short-term market. But we believe that will be an increasingly small amount of coal, especially after 2025, when all of the Washington entities comply with the CETA law, and do our best to avoid purchasing anything that would have been sourced from coal in the first place. But the marketplace is a little bit complicated. So just to kind of, that's a simplified answer, hopefully folks can understand that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Ray. And just a reminder, folks, please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A pod. Just due to the number and the volume of people and chats in the chat, it's really hard to track. So we'll just be answering questions in the Q&A pod. So thanks for understanding. Looks like we have another question from Thane. As you reduce your use of coal, how will you recover costs?
Another perhaps Wendy question. I will say, as we reduce the use of coal, we're replacing it with other generation sources. And so I'm not quite sure what we mean by recover costs, but Wendy, anything to add there?
No, I think that's right. As we replace the generating resources that are going out of the portfolio in 2025, we'll be adding new resources, and those new resources are recovered from customers, you know, in the same, basically, essentially in the same way that the old resources were, just recovered in rates from customers.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Ray. Okay, I'm going to just take 2 more questions and then keep us moving so we stay on track for time. How is carbon neutrality calculated?
I think, Annie, that is probably a really complicated answer. And so I'm going to punt that one to our feedback form, and we'll provide a more detailed answer than I think we can get to in this space today.
Sure, no problem. Okay. And we'll check on this one last question if this is something we think we can respond to live. If not, we'll punt that one as well. Is solar cheaper in Western Washington than coal?
Good question, Annie. I don't have, well, first I'm going to say I'm not a modeler. I don't have those data in front of me. I will say that that the cost of electricity and the different sources is a very complex challenge and part of what we're addressing in the ISP. So in the integrated system plan, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So we'll get closer to that conversation today. The answer to that question, though, is probably a long-term answer that we'll find in future planning documents and future meetings.
Okay. All right, thanks. Well, in the interest of time, I want to keep us rolling. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So understanding and responding to customer needs. So we'll keep going with the presentation slides here. So Ray, I'll just hand it over back to you.
Thanks, Annie. So before we move slides, the total demand for energy, both gas and electric, has not grown much over the last 10 years. As new customer growth has balanced these things, like savings from energy efficiency programs and other efficient appliances, have kind of leveled the growth off. But the future looks very different. And so in the next few slides, we're going to focus on the electric system, but I want to note that the planning process we're talking about today will look at both the electric and the natural gas needs. Next slide, please. So what you see on the slide is a forecast looking out into 2050. The total amount of energy that we serve customers will be about 40% higher than the total energy we serve today. And this is mostly due to increase in electric vehicle usage and their charging needs. And this forecasted growth is the growth expected even with savings from energy efficiency programs and energy saved from customers installing things like rooftop solar. Energy consumption from electric vehicle charging grows about 25% per year, growing from 6% of the total system load in 2030 to about 25% of the system load in 2045. And this is because Washington State is really one of the top states in terms of people adopting electric vehicles. In 2023, about 20% of all new vehicles purchased in the state of Washington were either electric or plug-in hybrid vehicles. You might notice from the chart too that the non-residential demand, the bottom row, declined slightly in the chart. This is due to expected savings from building codes. We talked about those in the policy slide earlier, and other energy efficiency programs and customer-owned solar. And however, the residential growth before new electric vehicles or EV load makes up for this decline in total. And then we layer on this dramatic increase in electric vehicle demand. So we really see, we see a significant upward trend that we need to address. So on the next slide, we'll talk about what does that actually mean for us, and for us as a utility and for you as a customer. Next slide, please. In short, it means we have a lot of work to do. PSE's current owned and contracted generating capacity is about 6,500 megawatts. That's the 2023 column, the left column on the chart. Remember that non-renewable energy, at least a portion of that, includes our last remaining coal generation. So not only do we have to account for the increase in electricity demand, but we also have to replace some of our existing resources. And meeting CETA requirements for carbon neutral generation will necessitate new clean energy resources in the amount of about 6,700 megawatts by 2030. That's the center column you look at there. And that's more energy than PSE has acquired in its 150-year history and effectively double our current generating capacity. And as we look out further, meeting 2045 clean energy goals means we need to acquire approximately 15,000 megawatts of new renewable and non-emitting resources. To give you a little scale, on the right, you see what it would hypothetically take to deliver 15,000 megawatts of clean energy. And I note that this is cumulative, right? We're not picking from one of these boxes or one of these bullets. It's all of these resources would be needed to achieve 15,000 megawatts. So that's 700,000 residential solar panel systems, another 50,000 residential battery storage systems, another 8 peaking resource plants. These are plants that burn right now natural gas, but can burn biodiesel in the future to serve a peak demand. And then you add another 1,250 wind turbines, 45 solar plants. I won't go through every one of these, but the message here is that it's a lot of new clean resources. And we're not there today, but thankfully we've been working on this for a while and we'll continue to pursue new clean resources on multiple fronts. And the next slide, we'll talk about that. So since 2019, when CETA passed, we procured more than 3,500 megawatts of clean energy. What you see on screen here is a list of projects that are or will be online in the next few years. This doesn't fill the need completely, obviously, but we're well on our way. And right now, we're in the middle of the largest energy acquisition process in Puget Sound energy and Pacific Northwest history. So we know there's a lot of work to be done here, and we're committed to continuing the progress that you see on this slide well into the future. And while we're taking on this challenge really directly and with purpose and resolve, we're also looking to our customers, each of you, to help on your side of the meter, as we talked about earlier. Next slide. So as we talked about a few slides ago, our hypothetical solution for those 15,000 megawatts includes a lot of customer solar panels and batteries and conservation and demand response. And while those numbers are for example purposes, these are spaces where you can get involved and have a direct role in clean energy transformation today. And you may be able to contribute in one or all of these options. And all of them effectively reduce the amount of clean energy PSE needs to procure, which then on the other end saves customers money because we don't have to buy those additional resources. So just briefly, what are they? Distributed resources, or DERs, include programs like rooftop solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and other smart appliances. These are technologies that promote two-way flows of energy and offer opportunities for utilities and customers to work together to meet demand. Demand response, or we call them our flex programs, center around conservation. And conservation has been a key strategy for utilities, including PSE, for a long time, especially during extreme weather. Our demand response programs, or flex programs, incentivize you to reduce or shift your energy use during peak demand to reduce strain on the grid and offset the amount of generation that we need to procure or purchase. And then energy efficiency can help our customers save energy and money, essentially getting more for less. This is one of the most cost-effective ways to meet needs while conserving electricity and natural gas. All right, I think we have a question slide here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. And actually, Jack, I'm going to ask you to flip back to a previous slide. There were a couple of questions about slide 19, which is the one with the purple, green, and teal. There you go. So there was a little bit of confusion on this. It says this slide shows electricity growth mainly for EVs, not from conversion from gas. Is PSE still assuming that there will be modest growth and heat pumps, induction stoves, clothes dryers, etc.
Yeah, Annie, what I would say is this chart is from our 2023 electric progress report, which is now almost 2 years old. We're starting this integrated system planning process. And again, I'm using a term that I haven't introduced yet, but we'll come to it in just a couple of slides. We're going to update this slide. We're going to update those assumptions. And so we'll be able to answer that question better in the months and year or so to come as we develop those new data.
Sounds good. Okay, and then there's another question related to slide 19, and then you can move forward, Jack. It just says, why does the graph on this page show no increase in residential electrification by 2050?
Yeah, again, Annie, we're looking at a 23 analysis that was before some of the current policy, climate policies that we're addressing. So our integrated system plan will address that in a different way. So this graph will probably look a lot different when you see it next time.
Perfect. Thanks for making those clarifications, Ray. There's one last question, I think, before we keep moving, Ray, and it's related to artificial intelligence. How much demand is expected from AI energy consumption?
Another piece, Annie, that is really new to this space since the last time we pulled a chart like this. So we'll be looking at stuff at items like that in the integrated system plan. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you today, but it's definitely something that we need to address.
Good. Okay, Jack, if you want to go back to the Q&A slide, and then you can go ahead and go to the next one. And while we're moving into this next set of slides, which I think might take probably the most time, just please be mindful again that please put your questions in the Q&A pod. We will try to get to as many as we can. If they can't be answered today, we'll try to include them in the feedback report. And while we're gearing up to start this next set of slides, if participants could please share in the chat. We just would love to see a waterfall response, a one word or sentence in the chat to let us know what way you currently use clean energy. We'd love to see what the customers and folks out in the public are doing and thinking about. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ray to cover developing a roadmap for the future. Over to you, Ray.
All right. Thanks, Annie. So before we talk about that integrated system plan, that term I just dropped a few minutes ago, we need to start with what are our foundations for our planning? So next slide, please. So we always start with safety and reliability. That's our foundation. That is the single most important thing for us when we look at our system plan. As we make our way through this transformation, this exciting transformation, we really want to remember that our core purpose is to make sure that all of you have safe and reliable energy. And so everything we do is guided by that foundation. And then secondly, next slide, please. We're deeply committed to ensuring that as we go through this transformation, that all of our customers benefit. Led by our energy equity team, our planners and engineers, and everyone at PSE is working to understand and reduce barriers and burdens to accessing our programs and services. This new integrated planning process will show how we engage and involve customers in developing the actions in the plan, and how we develop and launch products and programs that mitigate those barriers. Ultimately, we want customers to see and experience the tangible benefits of this transition. And we're working to examine equity in every area of our business, not just in resource planning. We are committed to partnering locally, ensuring a range of wishes are heard, and working to keep costs reasonable. And today we have a robust and growing portfolio of programs to assist our most vulnerable customers with their bills and provide them with opportunities to participate in the clean energy transformation. And when we get to the end of the slides, there's some additional links that we can share with you. Next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of background to get to this conversation about planning. Historically, utility system planning has been largely siloed. We used to examine the gas and electric resource planning separately, resulting in numerous separate plans. And that's what this graphic is designed to show. So this is really just for the electric system, but you can imagine a similar one for gas. And in each column, there are separate plans that we needed to put together. This was mostly possible and worked fine because the grid historically worked one way, with that large generation in multiple places, delivering electricity and natural gas to our customers. And those plans had obvious overlaps and intersections. They were not holistically integrated with each other. But now, with increasing use of distributed resources and customers playing a larger role in how energy gets created and used, we think a more holistic approach is appropriate. And so, as we plan for the future grid, we need to incorporate the interaction between all of these planning groups regularly. So next slide. So this year with you, we're beginning work towards a single integrated planning process for both our gas and electric utilities. This new plan, called an Integrated System Plan, or you'll hear the term ISP, is the first in the state of Washington and one of only a handful in the entire country. It will integrate transmission, distribution, energy supply needs for both the gas and electric utilities, along with customer resource into one single plan. So not only does ISP integrate those various parts of the energy system, but it will integrate those for both gas and electric, a critical difference from how we historically conducted this process or how it worked. Next slide, please. So this new integrated system plan will outline our path forward for the next decade and beyond, beginning with specific actions and clean energy targets in the near term. An important note for us today, though, this ISP concept is extremely new, and the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission, who ultimately has the responsibility of reviewing and approving the plan, is still drafting rules that we'll need to follow. So what you see here today at a high level is what we expect, but there is some uncertainty until that process of developing rules concludes in July of next year. So to develop this plan, we'll first create 3 distinct timeframes: short-term targets and actions in the near term, medium-term strategies, and then longer-term planning needs. And as we go through this planning process over roughly the next 2 years, we'll have a slide on that in a minute, we'll talk about each of those timeframes. But it's important to note that the closer we are to today, the more specific we can be about our plans and our actions. The further we go out, the less certain we are about what the future looks like. And so the less certain are our plans and our actions. And the farther we go out, the more we need to consider different scenarios for what the future might look like. Resource planning by its nature really is an iterative process, and it's based on the info that we have today about what the future might look like. So we project demand, like on that chart that you saw earlier, noting that just in 2 years, we will probably have a substantial shift. We project the use of electricity and natural gas. We try to anticipate what future technologies might be available. And we're also working to predict, using climate data, how climate change might impact us. As with any planning progress, though, looking out in the future really is theoretical in nature. We're going to learn a lot in this first ISP, and then we'll do it again every 4 years or so, getting better with each iteration. Next slide, please. So as I noted before, we expect the commission rules will require that we file an updated plan about once every 4 years. Again, that may shift a little bit, but in general, we're going to do this repeatedly for the foreseeable future. Our first plan is due on January 1st, 2027. So it's really a plan that needs to be completed by the end of 2026. So all the work we do to develop the plan will occur between now and the end of 2026. So we're working with a condensed timeline to start on our very first ISP. And I'll walk you through this chart. So right now, what are we doing? We're focused on defining the scope of the work for the ISP. What will it include and what is the scale of the ISP? And then collecting and developing data, which will be the backbone of our modeling. Computer modeling is a critical component of this work. We need to collect a lot of data about what conditions are like today and maybe like in the future, and then run that through multiple computer models. We run multiple scenarios of different possible conditions. So these models can take days or sometimes even weeks to run. Next year, we'll shift from creating and analyzing 2 models to 3 models. And then we'll run those the outputs of these models to understand what resources and programs we might need in those short, medium, and long-term timeframes. There will be additional public webinars like this one as we dive deeper into that process. Then in 2026, we will really focus on writing the plan. We expect there will be another series of meetings during that timeframe as we get more detailed on resource and customer program needs. Sometime in the second half of 2026, we'll file a draft ISP. And when I say file, that means file with the commission. And we'll be looking for the public to give us input on that document, which will shape changes we make to the final plan. Then on or before January 1 of 2027, we'll file that final plan. But we won't be done. After filing, the commission has about a year to review and make a formal decision on the plan. And there will likely be additional public comment opportunities through that formal commission process. Okay, next slide. We're creeping up on the end of my slides here. So we're really on how can customers get involved? And there's two categories of spaces. Let me rephrase that. Again, no pop quiz. I know that was a lot of information, but we want to leave with you today. What can you do to get involved, to stay involved? First, you can always find the latest information on our ISP website, which we'll drop a link to in the chat. This is always going to be the most current source of information, so we encourage you to visit that periodically. And while you're there, I would ask that you please join our email list for updates and opportunities to get involved. Due to laws regarding the use of email lists, we can only add you to our regular updates if you sign up yourself. So please take a few seconds and sign up so we can make sure you know about opportunities in the future. We promise we're not going to share your email address. You're only going to get 1 or 2 emails a month from us, but this will help you stay informed and find out when the next meeting is or the next opportunity to provide comment. Some of the opportunities in the future will be webinars like this one. We expect those to happen about once per quarter. And again, if you join our email list, you'll be the first to know when those get scheduled. And there will also be opportunities to provide comments on key topics. We don't have any specific question for you today. We're just getting started, but you can always submit comments or ideas at any time using our online comment form, our email address, or our voicemail. And there are links on the slides, and I think we're putting links into the chat too. And I know it's a ways away, but look for that opportunity in 2026 to provide comments on the draft. And I think, next slide, please.
One more, I think.
One more, yes. Okay. So I just talked about all the ways you can get involved in the planning process, but what can you do today to be part of this clean energy transformation? All of these, the words that are underlined, those are all links. So if you have the presentation in PDF form that's on the website, you can click them, but we'll also put these in the chat. So energy efficiency, as I mentioned, is one of the easiest ways to get involved in saving energy. We have dozens of programs to choose from, like rebates on large and small appliances, EV chargers, and smart thermostats. I even noticed yesterday that we have incentives on smart thermostats for electric baseboard heating, not just your typical Nest thermostat. We also have enhanced rebates for income qualified customers through a program called Efficiency Boost. I mentioned our Flex programs earlier. This is a somewhat new program that helps customers manage energy consumption during periods of high demand. We call those Flex events. Customers can participate in these programs and earn rewards just by lowering your energy use during a few critical periods each year. We also have a bill discount rate program and other programs to help with bill assistance. So if you take a look at that link, there is a 3-question form you can fill out to see if you qualify for the bill discount rate program. It doesn't require any detailed personal information. It just asks questions about your household income, number of people in your household, and one more question that I can't remember, but it is only 3 questions. And then lastly, take a look at our weatherization programs. These also sort of fall under energy efficiency, or not sort of, do fall under energy efficiency. But there are a lot of options for helping improve the insulation in your house, which can reduce the loss of warm and cool air and really help keep your energy bills low. And one more thing, we'll put this in the chat, but if you're making upgrades to your home insulation or heat pump or furnace, we have a list of recommended energy professionals that you can use to identify companies that have been pre-screened and share our commitment to quality and service to you.
Great.
Annie, I think I have one more slide and then need to pause for questions. Yes? Yeah.
There's a contact us, yes.
Okay. So this is our last content slide. These are all the ways that you can get in touch with us. So ISP at PSE.com, we monitor that daily, multiple times a day. So please feel free to share your comments, your questions, your ideas there. There's a feedback form at our website /contact. You can use that to submit a comment or question. That's just a personal preference, email or forum. Both of them get to us in the same way. You can leave a voicemail for us that will get transcribed and we'll add that as a comment. Again, please join our email list. We promise not to over send emails to you and visit our website, cleanenergyplan.pse.com for more details and regular details. Okay,
Great.
Annie, I think that's it except for questions.
Yes, thank you, Ray. I know that was a lot to get through in that last stint of slides, so great job. I did want to just remind folks, I've seen a couple of questions pop up about if we could share the slides. Yes, these slides have been shared on the website and Pauline has put that link in the chat in a PDF format. So please feel free to find those online and let us know if you need any additional help. There's another question that came up from Joel asking, are the public still welcome to observe the Resource Planning Advisory Group or RPAG meetings if they're interested in understanding some of the deeper technical issues at play in the planning process as they develop the ISP? And yes, Joel, of course, that is definitely going to be moving forward and open to the public if they're interested in that technical content.
Yeah, Annie, can I add to that? Joel, that's a great addition. Thank you. We should have put it on this slide. So for those of you that aren't familiar, we have a Resource Planning Advisory Group, RPAG for short. We love our acronyms here at PSE. And that is a group that provides really technical advice to PSE on our resource planning process. And so we meet with them roughly monthly, and their meetings are open to the public. They're live streamed on YouTube. They're published on the website. So you're always welcome to observe them. We publish the materials in the agenda about a week in advance, so you can take a look at those and see if there's topics of interest to you. And I will note that when you sign up for the email list, which I know you're all rushing to do right now, there's an option to sign up for RPAG notices. That will mean you get an extra email each month, but that would also make sure that you get notice when RPAG meetings are scheduled. Joel, thanks for that addition.
Great. And then I have some questions that I'm collecting that aren't being answered in writing that we'll try to answer live, just noting that we are approaching about 10 minutes left. So one question from Thane is PSE has been requesting customers to convert to more energy saving products, LED bulbs, insulation, solar, which I have 2 rooftop systems, more efficient heating systems, et cetera. However, we are still seeing double-digit increases in energy bills. And that's obviously more of a comment than a question. But Ray, would you like to say anything to that?
Yeah, Annie, I think what I would say is that I hear you, and you're not the first person I've heard that from, that we've heard that from. The clean energy transformation is, I don't use the word transformation lightly. We're recreating the way that we produce and deliver electricity to our customers. And so it's a complex and to some degree, expensive challenge. So we hear you, we're working on it, and we know it's a reality.
Thanks, Ray. A question from Lucas. Are there any expected enhancements to the Flex program to offer this for more products or for more customers, such as multifamily paid by the landlord and businesses?
Annie, I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to that, but we will find out and get an answer in the feedback report.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ray. And thanks for your patience, folks. as we're sorting through these questions. Another question from Jake. Is PSE considering time of day rate schedules in the future? I just purchased an EV Class 2 charger and it has the ability to schedule charging during lower rate times, typically overnight. Would love to see PSE support time of day load balancing with rate incentives. And then there was a related item from Jake, so I'll go ahead and read that as well. EV charger rebates are very limited to 3 charger manufacturers, so I assume PSE has financial-based agreements with those manufacturers. There are a broad range of chargers available, but without rebates. So yeah, any response on that one, Ray?
Annie, I'll go. I think the beginning of your question was about time of use rates, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Support time of day load balancing with rate incentives. Yes, yes.
So we have a time of use rate that is in a pilot stage right now, and I think our team can probably put a link to that in the chat. The last time I looked, which was a couple of weeks ago, I believe the pilot was currently full. But we can put that link in the chat, and then Annie, in the feedback report, we'll try to get an answer for what are the next steps for that plan.
Okay.
Or that rate category, excuse me.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And then I'm gonna go to the questions in the pod because it looks like that I think the remaining ones that are being directed to Ray. So from David, are the MW shown for wind solar average power over long periods of time or peak?
Could we go back to that slide? Are we going all the way back to the
Sorry, Ray, which slide do you need?
I think it's the chart with the it's the graph of megawatts of energy, I believe.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
David, I'm pretty sure that is based on nameplate capacity, not on peak. Yes, this chart, yes. Those are nameplate capacity, which will, so the actual capacity will be different depending on the type of resource. Most of these are intermittent resources, right? The wind doesn't always blow, right? So those facilities aren't producing at their maximum 24/7, the same with solar, et cetera.
Okay, and then I have another question from Thane. So thanks so much for your patience. With the increase of EV, how much of a strain will that put on the legacy system?
Thane, I would say, I'm not sure it's about a strain on the system as much as making sure that we have enough generation to meet that demand. So that's what this system planning process is about. We need to do a good job of predicting what that demand will look like, and then we need to provide the generation to meet that demand. And the system plan will also look at the transmission lines, so those large transmission lines that might need to bring wind or solar from Eastern Washington or Wyoming or Idaho. And we're looking at the local distribution system, the local lines, the local substation, the local systems that'll be also needed to be able to handle that extra delivery. So we're looking at all of those components in the system plan to make sure that they can all work together and meet the needs of our customers going forward.
Okay, great. And I'm just looking at the back channel and answered and questions, and it looks like we've gotten through most of them that we can. It looks like I think the remaining questions will have to be responded to in the feedback report. Okay. I'm just doing a double check with the PSE team. Are there any other questions that I needed to bring up before we start wrapping up? Okay. So I will go ahead and start wrapping us up, and just want to thank you all for your very thoughtful questions and insight. I know that there's a lot of questions that got responded to in writing, and then there's several questions that will be responded to in the feedback report, so that PSE can address those fully in writing and get those out to all of you. I do want to just highlight that, again, the feedback report will be sent out, so please keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you, for some reason, don't get your answer that you were hoping to hear about, please just let PSE know. There's multiple ways you can get in contact with them. Most of those opportunities have been copied into the chat, so please feel free to use those. And please note that we would love your feedback today about how this experience was for you. I know there's lots of people on the line, lots of questions being asked in the Q&A, lots of them being answered, and lots of different things going on the back channels here on chat and et cetera. So would love to hear how it was from a participant's experience. And we have a pop-up poll that will come up as soon as you leave the webinar. And we just encourage you to respond to that. It really helps us be able to shape these webinars going forward into a meeting that's really helpful and custom for your needs. So please go ahead and do that. Also note that we have a second session being held on the same topic in 2 days, Thursday, November 21st from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. So please feel free to attend and or spread the word about that. Colleen, if you don't mind putting the registration for that session 2 in the chat so people have it at their fingertips in case you'd like to hear the presentation again, or just hear what other people think that are available in the evenings. And then while I wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much, Ray, and your team for presenting today, for being willing and able to come to the table and answer people's questions. And thank you all participants for being here and taking time out of your lunch. And so I won't get between you and your lunch any longer. I'll make sure we wrap up here, and please remember to stay connected. Please feel free to reach out with any thoughts or ideas, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And please just don't forget to fill out that exit survey. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you all.
great day.